NASA has
elevation
identified
map
the most
reveals the moon's
scientifically
south pole,
valuable and
steep slopes,
resource-rich
deep
locations
craters,
on the
and
moon,
boulder fields.
and they are also the most dangerous places any spacecraft has ever been asked to land. The lunar South Pole is where Artemis is headed, and the closer scientists look at what landing there actually requires, the more sobering the
Tranquility
engineering
Base,
picture
flat,
becomes.
smooth Mare basalt.
The
In
appeal
contrast,
of the lunar
the South
poles
Pole,
is straightforward
Highland chaos.
and well documented. Near the South Pole, permanently shadowed crater interiors hold water ice that has been accumulating
Manual
and
control
preserving
engaged.
for potentially
Boulder field
billions
ahead,
of
pitching
years.
forward.
The Lunar
Veering left,
Reconnaissance
clearing
Orbiter, India's Chandrayaan-1, and India's Chandrayaan-3 have all contributed data suggesting significant volatile deposits in and around these regions. Water ice means oxygen for breathing, hydrogen for fuel, and drinking water, the foundational resources for any sustained human presence beyond Earth. Additionally, the poles have something the rest of the moon lacks.
LRO's
Near-permanent
elevation map
sunlight on
reveals the
certain
moon's
elevated
south pole,
ridges and
steep
crater
slopes,
rims.
deep
Because
craters,
the moon's
and boulder
axial
fields.
tilt is only about 1.5 degrees, some high-elevation terrain near the poles receives sunlight for over 80 to 90% of the lunar year. Peaks of near-eternal light, a term used by lunar scientists, allow solar-powered equipment to operate continuously without enduring the 2-week lunar nights that would freeze and drain batteries across equatorial regions. So the poles offer water,
Manual
fuel,
control
and solar
engaged.
power,
Boulder field
everything
ahead,
needed
pitching
for a
forward.
permanent base.
Veering left,
The
clearing
problem
it.
is getting there safely. The terrain near the lunar South Pole is among the most rugged on the entire moon. Unlike the relatively flat Mare basins where Apollo landed, the South Polar region is ancient, heavily cratered highland terrain. The surface is covered in craters of all sizes, from enormous multi-kilometer basins to fresh meter-scale pits. Slopes are steep and irregular. Boulders are abundant. The terrain has been bombarded for 4 billion years, with very little
Tranquility
geological
Base, flat,
resurfacing
smooth
to
Mare
smooth
basalt.
it out.
In contrast, the
Landing
South Pole,
on this
Highland
terrain
chaos.
requires knowing exactly where
Manual
you are
control
landing at
engaged.
high resolution.
Boulder field ahead,
Having
pitching
real-time
forward.
terrain
Veering
navigation
left,
to
clearing
avoid
it.
hazards detected during final descent, and having a vehicle that can abort or redirect if an unexpected obstacle appears. The Apollo landing system relied on relatively flat, predictable terrain and still required Neil Armstrong to manually fly past a boulder field at Tranquility Base with seconds of fuel remaining. The lighting conditions at the poles add another critical layer. The sun
Tranquility
stays very
Base,
low
flat,
on the
smooth Mare
horizon,
basalt.
less than
In
2
contrast,
degrees
the
above
South
it
Pole,
throughout the
Highland
entire
chaos.
year due to the minimal axial tilt. Low-angle sunlight creates extreme shadows. A boulder only 1 meter tall
Manual
can cast
control
a shadow
engaged.
dozens of
Boulder
meters
field
long.
ahead, pitching forward.
Craters and
Veering
depressions
left,
that would be
clearing
clearly
it.
visible from directly overhead become invisible from the side because they are entirely in shadow. Camera-based navigation systems designed for standard lighting conditions fail in this environment because the contrast between lit surfaces and shadowed surfaces is extreme. This is why LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and other active sensing systems are critical for polar landings. NASA
Tranquility
and its
Base,
commercial
flat,
partners
smooth
are
Mare basalt.
developing relative
In contrast, the
navigation
South Pole,
systems
Highland chaos.
specifically for this challenge. These systems compare real-time imagery or sensor data against preloaded high-resolution maps to
Manual
determine
control
exact
engaged.
position during descent.
Boulder field ahead, pitching
NASA's
forward.
Prime 1
Veering
mission
left,
and the
clearing it.
commercial landers under the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program are testing components of these systems on precursor missions before humans arrive. There is also a communication problem. The Moon's South Pole is geometrically challenging for direct communication with Earth. Depending on the specific landing site, there may be periods when the direct line of sight to Earth is blocked by terrain. NASA is planning a lunar relay satellite constellation, including missions like Lunar IceCube and the Lunar Gateway in later Artemis phases, to ensure continuous communication coverage. The dust at the poles also has properties that are less well characterized than equatorial regolith. Because the poles receive very little
Tranquility
solar
Base,
heating,
flat, smooth Mare
the
basalt.
electrostatic
In
behavior
contrast,
of
the
dust
South Pole,
grains
Highland
and the
chaos.
mechanical properties of the surface
Manual
may
control
differ from
engaged.
what Apollo-era
Boulder field
data
ahead,
describes.
pitching forward. Veering
Landing
left,
rocket
clearing
plumes
it.
interacting with this regolith at a previously unvisited site introduce unknowns. None of these challenges makes polar landing impossible, but they collectively explain why NASA's approach has been
LRO's
cautious,
elevation map reveals the
sequential,
moon's south
and
pole,
heavily
steep
dependent
slopes,
on precursor
deep craters,
robotic
and boulder
missions
fields.
before committing astronauts to a region where the margin for error is very small. Follow for more on the real engineering challenges behind returning humans to the moon. And tell me, given the risks and costs
Manual
involved in
control
landing at the
engaged.
lunar South Pole,
Boulder field ahead,
do you
pitching
think
forward.
the water ice
Veering
resource
left,
is valuable
clearing
enough
it.
to justify the difficulty?